I never should have gone up to that cabin. I know that now, but at the time, it seemed like a good idea. It was the middle of autumn, and I needed a break from the city. My job had been driving me crazy, and I just wanted a quiet place to clear my head. When my friend Jake mentioned his family's old cabin, I jumped at the chance. "It's pretty isolated," Jake had warned me. "No neighbors, no phone service, just you and nature." It sounded perfect. I packed a bag, grabbed some groceries, and set out on the 3-hour drive to the cabin. The road twisted and turned as I got closer, taking me deep into the forest. The trees grew thicker, their branches reaching over the road like long, bony fingers. The sky was gray, and the wind howled through the trees, making them sway. When I finally reached the cabin, I parked my car and took a good look around. The place was small, made of old wood that had turned dark with age. The windows were dusty, and the porch steps creaked as I climbed them. I unlocked the door with the key Jake had given me and stepped inside. The cabin smelled like pine and old wood. There was a small kitchen, a living room with a couch and a fireplace, and a bedroom in the back. It was simple, but it had everything I needed. I put my bags down and started to unpack, trying to shake off the strange feeling I had. Maybe it was just the quiet. I wasn't used to being this far from civilization. After I unpacked, I decided to go for a walk. The forest was beautiful, with tall trees and thick undergrowth. The leaves were orange and yellow, and they crunched under my feet as I walked. I felt a little better out there, with the fresh air filling my lungs. I even found a small stream not too far from the cabin, the water clear and cold. I knelt down to take a drink, and that's when I saw it. Across the stream, standing between the trees, was a figure. It was tall, almost impossibly so, and its skin was pale, almost white. It didn't move, didn't make a sound. It just stood there, watching me. I blinked, and it was gone. I stood up quickly, my heart pounding. I told myself it was just my imagination, a trick of the light. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I hurried back to the cabin, glancing over my shoulder every few steps. The forest seemed darker now, the trees closer together. When I got back, I locked the door and checked the windows, making sure they were all shut tight. I tried to tell myself I was being silly, that there was nothing out there. But the cabin felt different now, like it was watching me too. That night, I built a fire in the fireplace and made myself some dinner. The warmth of the fire helped calm my nerves, and I settled down on the couch with a book. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, but I tried to ignore it. I was just starting to relax when I heard it, a soft tap, tap, tap on the window. I froze, my eyes darting to the window next to the couch. The curtains were drawn, but I could see the shadow of something on the other side. Tap, tap, tap. The sound was slow, deliberate, like someone was trying to get my attention. I held my breath, waiting for it to stop. But it didn't. Tap, tap, tap. I stood up slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. I reached out and grabbed the curtain, pulling it back in one quick motion. There was nothing there. Just darkness and the trees swaying in the wind. I let out a shaky breath and closed the curtain again, trying to calm myself. I decided to go to bed early, hoping that sleep would take my mind off everything. I turned off the lights, leaving the fire to burn down on its own, and went to the bedroom. The bed was small but comfortable, and I pulled the blankets up to my chin trying to feel safe. But as I lay there in the dark, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I must have drifted off at some point because I woke up to the sound of footsteps. They were slow, heavy, and they were coming from just outside the bedroom door. My heart stopped, and I held my breath, listening. The footsteps paused, then started again, closer this time. I could hear the floorboards creaking under the weight of whatever it was. I wanted to get up, to run, but I couldn't move. I was frozen, my body refusing to obey. The footsteps stopped right outside the door, and I heard the handle turn. The door creaked open, just a crack, and I saw a pale hand slip through the gap. I screamed. The hand pulled back and the door slammed shut. I jumped out of bed, my heart racing, and grabbed the lamp from the bedside table. I yanked open the door, ready to fight, but there was nothing there. The cabin was empty, the only sound the crackling of the dying fire in the other room. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat on the couch, the lamp in my hand, and watched the shadows dance on the walls. Every creak, every rustle of the wind made me jump. I kept expecting to see that pale figure again, to hear the footsteps return. But the night passed, and eventually, the first light of dawn crept through the windows. As soon as the sun was up, I packed my things and left. I didn't bother to clean up, didn't even eat breakfast. I just wanted to get out of there, to get back to the city where there were people, where I wasn't alone. The drive back felt like it took forever, the road twisting and turning, the trees seeming to reach for me as I passed. When I finally got home, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I locked my door, checked the windows, and sat down on my couch, trying to calm down. I told myself it was just my imagination, that there was nothing out there in the woods. But even now, I can't shake the feeling that something followed me back. I decided to spend a weekend alone in the woods. Life in the city was too stressful, and I needed a break. My friend Mike told me about his family's cabin. It was old and empty, but perfect for some peace and quiet. I thought it sounded like a great idea, so I packed my things and started driving. The cabin was deep in the forest, far away from the nearest town. The road was narrow, and trees crowded on both sides. As I drove, the sky turned gray and the wind picked up. The branches swayed like they were reaching for my car. It felt strange, but I shook off the feeling. I just wanted to relax. When I arrived, the cabin looked exactly how Mike had described it, small, made of dark wood and old. There was a porch with a few steps, which creaked when I climbed them. The door was heavy, and I had to use my shoulder to push it open. Inside, the cabin smelled like pine and dust. There was a small kitchen, a table with 2 chairs, and an old couch facing a fireplace. I walked through the place, finding a single bedroom in the back with a small bed and a window. Everything was simple, just enough for a quiet weekend. I put my bags down and decided to go for a walk before it got too dark. The forest around the cabin was beautiful, with colorful leaves covering the ground. I followed a small path through the trees, listening to the sound of birds and the rustling leaves. It felt peaceful, and I finally started to relax. After a while, I reached a small stream. The water was clear, and I knelt down to take a drink. When I looked up, I saw something across the stream. It was a figure standing still among the trees. It was tall and pale, almost blending in with the mist. I blinked and it was gone. A chill ran down my spine. I stood up quickly, looking around, but there was nothing there. I told myself it must have been a trick of the light, or my tired mind playing games with me. Still, I hurried back to the cabin, feeling like I was being watched. Once inside, I locked the door and checked the windows. I tried to laugh it off, telling myself I was just being silly. To calm down, I lit a fire in the fireplace and made some tea. The warmth of the fire helped, and I curled up on the couch with a book. The wind outside picked up, and the branches scratched against the windows. I tried to focus on my book, but the scratching sound wouldn't stop. It felt like something was trying to get in. Suddenly, there was a soft tap 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 on the window beside me. I froze. The tapping continued, slow and steady. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't help it. I turned my head, staring at the curtain that covered the window. The tapping got louder, and I reached out with a shaking hand to pull the curtain back. There was nothing there, just darkness and the trees swaying in the wind. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding and closed the curtain again. I tried to laugh, but it sounded weak. I decided it was time to go to bed. Maybe I was just tired, and that was making me imagine things. I turned off the lights, leaving the fire to die out on its own, and went to the bedroom. I got under the covers, trying to convince myself that everything was fine, but as I lay there, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Sometime in the night, I woke up. At first I didn't know why, but then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, heavy footsteps, coming from the living room. My heart started pounding, and I held my breath, listening. The footsteps came closer, stopping just outside my bedroom door. I wanted to get up, to run, but I was too scared to move. The door creaked open, just a little, and I saw a pale hand reach through the gap. I screamed, and the hand pulled back. The door slammed shut, and I jumped out of bed. I grabbed a flashlight and swung the door open, my heart racing. There was nothing there. The cabin was empty, the only sound the wind outside. I checked every corner, every shadow, but there was no one there. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat in the corner of the living room, the flashlight in my hand, waiting for morning. Every little sound made me jump. I kept expecting to see that figure again, to hear the footsteps return. When the first light of dawn came through the windows, I packed my things. I didn't care about breakfast, didn't even bother to clean up. I just wanted to leave. I drove away as fast as I could, the trees blurring past me, the cabin getting smaller in the distance. When I finally reached the city, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I locked my door, closed my curtains, and tried to forget what had happened. But even now, when the wind howls outside or I hear a soft tap at the window, I can't help but remember that pale hand reaching through the door. And I wonder if it followed me back. I needed a break. Life in the city was too much, and I felt like I was losing my mind. When my friend Tom told me about his family's cabin in the woods, I thought it was the perfect chance to get away. He said it was quiet, far from anyone, and had everything I needed: food, water, and a warm bed. The drive to the cabin was long. The road turned from smooth pavement to gravel, then to a narrow dirt path surrounded by thick trees. The sky was getting dark, and the wind blew the leaves around, making the forest look alive. I told myself it would be fine. I just wanted some peace and quiet, away from everything. When I reached the cabin, it looked old but sturdy. It was small, with wooden walls that had turned dark over time. The windows were dusty, and the front door creaked as I opened it. Inside it was simple: a small kitchen, a living room with an old couch, and one bedroom with a bed and a wooden dresser. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I put my bags down and decided to explore the area before it got too dark. I walked along a narrow path that led away from the cabin, the leaves crunching under my feet. It was quiet, too quiet, but that was what I came for. The air was cool, and the forest seemed endless. I reached a small clearing with a pond. The water was still, reflecting the gray sky. I knelt down to take a closer look, and that's when I saw it, a reflection of something behind me. It looked like a figure, tall and thin, standing at the edge of the clearing. I spun around, but there was nothing there, just trees and shadows. My heart started to race, and I quickly decided to head back to the cabin. I tried to convince myself that it was nothing, just my tired mind playing tricks on me. But the forest felt different now, like it was watching me. I hurried along the path, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the cool air. When I got back to the cabin, I locked the door and checked the windows, making sure they were shut tight. I laughed at myself for being scared, but it felt forced. To calm down, I made some tea and sat on the couch, trying to read a book I had brought with me. The wind outside picked up, making the branches scrape against the windows. It was an eerie sound, but I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was just the forest. I was safe inside, but then I heard something else, a soft knock at the door. I froze, my eyes staring at the door. It was a gentle knock, like someone was politely asking to come in. My heart pounded, and I stood up slowly, not sure what to do. Who could be out here in the middle of nowhere? The knock came again, a little louder this time. I took a deep breath and walked to the door. My hand shook as I reached for the handle. I opened the door just a crack, enough to see outside. There was no one there. I stepped back, my heart still racing. I closed the door and locked it again, trying to tell myself it was just the wind. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Something had knocked on that door. I decided to go to bed, hoping that sleep would make me feel better. I turned off the lights and got into the bed, pulling the blankets up to my chin. The cabin was dark, and every little sound made me jump. I closed my eyes, trying to ignore the fear that was growing inside me. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up. At first, I didn't know why, but then I heard it, soft footsteps, moving slowly across the floor. They were coming from the living room, heading toward the bedroom. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. I held my breath, listening. The footsteps stopped right outside the bedroom door. I could see the shadow of something under the crack of the door. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The door handle slowly turned, and the door creaked open. I couldn't see who or what it was, but I knew I wasn't alone. I jumped out of bed, grabbing the lamp from the bedside table, and ran for the window. I pushed it open and climbed out, falling to the ground outside. I got up and ran, not looking back. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking, and finally managed to unlock the door. I jumped in, started the car, and drove away as fast as I could, the cabin disappearing into the darkness behind me. When I finally reached the town, I stopped at a gas station and sat there, trying to catch my breath. I looked in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something standing behind me, but there was nothing. I never went back to that cabin, and I never asked Tom about it. Whatever was there, it wanted me gone, and I was happy to leave. Even now, I can't forget the sound of those footsteps, or the feeling that something was watching me from the shadows. It all started when I decided to spend a weekend alone in the woods. I needed a break from my busy life, and my friend Sam told me about his family's cabin. He said it was the perfect place to relax, far away from anyone, surrounded by nature. It sounded exactly like what I needed, so I packed my bag and drove out to the cabin. The road to the cabin was long and narrow, with thick trees on both sides. As I drove deeper into the forest, the sun began to set, and the sky turned a dark orange. I finally arrived, just as the last bit of light disappeared. The cabin looked old but cozy. It had a small porch and dark wood walls. I parked my car, grabbed my bag, and went inside. The cabin was simple. There was a small kitchen, a living room with an old couch, and a bedroom with a single bed. It smelled a little musty, like it hadn't been used in a while. I turned on the lights and started unpacking my things. The quiet was nice, and I felt myself relax for the first time in weeks. After settling in, I decided to make some dinner. I cooked some pasta, ate, and then sat on the couch with a book. The wind was blowing outside, and the trees made a soft rustling sound. It was peaceful, but as the night went on, the wind got stronger. The branches began to scratch against the windows, making a sound like fingernails on glass. I tried to ignore it, but then I heard something else, a soft knock at the door. I froze. It was a gentle, slow knock, like someone was asking to be let in. My heart started to race. I wasn't expecting anyone. Who could be out here in the middle of the woods at night? The knock came again, louder this time. I stood up, my hands shaking. Slowly, I walked to the door. I hesitated, then opened it just a crack. No one was there. I looked around, but all I could see were the dark trees and the shadows they cast. I quickly closed the door and locked it. I tried to convince myself that it was just the wind, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something had been there. I decided to go to bed. I turned off the lights and went into the bedroom, closing the door behind me. I got under the blankets, trying to feel safe. The room was dark, and every little noise made me jump. I closed my eyes, telling myself that I was just being silly. Then I heard it again. A knock, but this time it was coming from the bedroom window. My eyes shot open, and I stared at the window, barely able to breathe. The knocking continued, slow and steady. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. I was too scared. Suddenly, the knocking stopped. I waited, listening, but there was only silence. I finally gathered the courage to get up. I took a deep breath and walked slowly to the window. I pulled the curtain back, but there was nothing there, just darkness. I turned away from the window, and that's when I heard it, a creak, coming from the living room. It sounded like a footstep. My heart pounded in my chest as I listened. Another creak, then another. Someone was in the cabin. I grabbed my bag, still half packed, and rushed to the door. I could hear the footsteps getting closer, moving toward the bedroom. I opened the door and ran out into the night. I didn't look back. I just ran as fast as I could to my car. I jumped in, locked the doors, and started the engine. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone or something chasing me. But there was nothing. The cabin disappeared behind me, swallowed by the darkness of the forest. I didn't stop driving until I was back in the city. I parked in front of my apartment and sat there, trying to calm down. I told myself it was just my imagination, that there was nothing really there. But deep down, I knew what I had felt. I knew that something had been in that cabin with me. I never went back to the cabin, and I never asked Sam about it. Whatever was out there in the woods, I wanted nothing to do with it. Even now, when I close my eyes at night, I sometimes hear that soft knocking, and I wonder if it followed me home